that came from.
Wait, what is the blue versus the gray?
You know, the Civil War.
Oh, that.
That one.
I was like
Civil War.
6 months old then.
I was a general.
All right.
Paula wasn't even a twinkle in her parents' eye. Yeah, we're live. Oh, we're live. Whoops, sorry.
Oh, and we're live.
Oh, hello.
It is Tuesday,
What an
October 12th, 2021, 5:02 p.m. We are 2 minutes late today because I had a personal matter to deal with. Kate just was late, and then Kate and I both signed in to the command account, and neither of us could start the show because we were both logged in. So, you know, it was just one of those big screw-up situations. We've had a lot of questions about David's album cover picture, which you'll all be pleased to know that Rick Grinnell, the former ambassador to the Federal Republic of Germany and the acting director of national intelligence, former, has called creepy, even though there were no mention of feet anywhere in connection to it.
Like a little pot kettle, I feel like.
Yeah. So, David, what is the story? How did you come by this excellent picture that so antagonizes Rick Grinnell?
Let me clarify. Rick Grinnell did not mention feet in his comment, but I can confirm, I have just checked, I have 2 feet. So we're fine. We're set, right?
And do you post pictures of them ever?
I told you that conversation was terrible.
Has never happened to my knowledge.
We're just having way too much fun with it.
No, but there is a story behind said picture, which has nothing to do with Rick Grinnell's, creepy stalking. So the one holiday a year that is most special in my family and always has been and always will be is Halloween. And we have begun celebrating already, and we use up most of the power in the Washington Capital region each year with all of our yard lights and decorations and moving creepy things to scare anybody who drives or walks by. That's just what we do.
I love it.
As such, we have always been fans as a couple, and now as a couple with children, of Halloween parties, adult or otherwise. And a few years ago, my wife and I attended one such party, and my character, which I believe Ben copied and pasted into the note for this in lieu of fun, was the character Les Grossman from Tropic Thunder. Tom Cruise's, I think, one of his best characters because it was so minimal and you didn't actually have to see Tom Cruise. And so we decided to go all out, and we tried to make it as literally as specific as possible with the same watch, the same bow tie, the same suspenders, the same shirt, as much as we could, including me having to find some hair that I could paste on around here to look like the character, because he had some hair around here. But it worked, and that is the fuzzy picture, because the ones that are actually high resolution, nobody needs to see. It's just too creepy. Rick Grinnell may be right. I think the character is just off enough, but I'm not sure that's what he was going for. I think he was trying to find a way to get back at Ben for his subtle poking.
Yeah, and all right, so David, you are here to play Where's the Lie? For those who need a refresher on the rules of Where's the Lie, David is going to tell a story. It may be true, it may be false. Kate doesn't know, I don't know, the audience doesn't know. The audience is already voting on whether the story you haven't yet told is a lie. You are allowed to change your vote at any time, including, if David's nose starts growing when it reaches here, you might change your vote to yes. When the story is done, Kate and I will each ask 3 questions. We will bring on members of the audience who can ask 3 questions. We will all give our sense of whether this story is true or false. The audience will cast its final ballots. It's like, the Virginia election. Voting is already underway, but it doesn't end until November 2nd or whatever. And then we will do the big reveal. So, David, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me reconfirm, or is it confirming? I think it's confirming.
I'm going to proffer a guess as to what your story is about.
Is this going to be one of your 3 questions? You're giving one up already?
No, I think that is your story, is it going to involve you having hair at some point in your life? Because I firmly believe that. Yes, exactly.
No one would buy it.
Okay, I'm glad that.
That said, I should pull up a picture, because when I was a wee lad, I did have a nice set of blonde locks on this head.
Which is really hard to imagine, I have to say.
Tell me about it.
Really hard to imagine.
I see the picture and I don't recognize anything about it, so I think it's probably fake news. But I did end up darkening the hair, and then somewhere around 15, 16, it was receding. And so by the time I got to college, I was doing that weird thing where you're still trying to grow it. So there might have been some, mullet in the back and nothing in front activity, which those files are permanently sealed. And then in graduate school, I learned that I needed to cut it to the skin. So.
And how does that not, like the back hair folded over the front, not keep you out of the agency?
Oh, I didn't do that. By then I had it down
I
to
see,
here.
okay.
So yeah, this is a decades-long phenomenon. Yeah.
It's like you and Vladimir Lenin.
It's like that.
Lenin was also like bald at a very, very young age.
And radical revolutionaries as well. That's the overlap.
Yes, that's the other similarity.
That's the Venn diagram.
Okay, let me confirm that when you told me that I had to, make a story for this, the idea was 10 to 15 minutes is the ideal time?
It can be 10.
Right.
Don't do what Virginia did.
Virginia Heffernan did it in 3 sentences.
Okay, that's not a story. That's a haiku or a...
Yeah, it was kind of a haiku. And then Dwayne Betts went on for 45, 50 minutes. Yeah.
I will go no longer than 35 minutes, I promise.
And one other rule.
Yeah.
Which is for the audience, not for you. You are not allowed to use Google, Bing, or any other real-time search engine or fact-checking device enabled to you by modern technology.
I'm going to use Bing right now to see what Bing's market share is.
Which is what everyone was thinking at that moment.
You cannot fact-check, David. No DuckDuckGo. None of this. Like, you got to use your own mind and debate in the Greek chorus. So, okay. David, the floor is yours.
All right. I will try to keep it to 10 to 15 minutes by adjusting my notes accordingly. Okay, so...
You wrote notes?
It was a dark and stormy night. Wait, wrong note card. That's my next Lawfare article. Okay, so this is a story from before I actually joined the CIA. This is a story from when I was a graduate student at Duke University, and I was conducting my field research. This is why for the purposes of this story, I allow Ben to call me Mr. Priess instead of Dr. Priess, because I had not yet attained the doctorate. I was teaching a class.
You were at the time, I think, Master Priess.
I may have been a master. I'm not sure I'd earned the title yet, but
but were you married yet?
I was not.
Yeah, maybe. So you would have been technically Master Priess.
Oh my. So there I was teaching a class, because at Duke they allowed me as a graduate student to those poor seniors to teach a senior seminar. And so I had a group of students, and we had spent the semester talking about international conflict and violence, which is just a laugh every week. And near the end of the term, I told the students, some of whom had asked about me teaching another class, so some of them were gluttons for punishment, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not teaching.
There's the lie. No one would ever take your class. Like,
no one would ever take my class, right?
Yeah.
I told them, sorry, next semester, spring semester, I guess it would be, I'm actually going to the Middle East to do my research for my doctorate, so no class. And then at the end, there was a guy who was auditing the class. I can't remember his name, but he came up at the end of class and said, "Hello," because he was British, so they all say hello. And he said, "Hello, yes, cheerio." And he said, where in the Middle East are you going? I'm not going to do the accent the whole time. I won't punish you. But he said,
where in the Middle East are you going, sir?
He said, indeed. And I told him, I've scheduled, to do Yemen, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, a few countries in and around the Arabian Peninsula. And he said, "Oh, Qatar, that's interesting. Not too many people go there." This is before the American military and the natural gas and all that made Qatar a place that people actually went. It was a backwater. And he said, do you have contacts in Qatar? And I said, "Well, no, I don't actually. That's a place, unlike some of the other countries, where I hadn't yet made initial contacts for me to go and talk to and set up research involving foreign policy and national security." So he said, "Well, I know a guy. I went to Sandhurst several years ago with Hamad al-Hawali, or I can't remember the exact name, but I think it was Hamad." And he said, "I went with Hamad al-Hawali, and I'm pretty sure he's back in Qatar now. So, let me give you the fax number I have for him." That's how we did things back then, fax. "Let me give you the fax number. Maybe you can send him a note and, meet him when he's there. He was a nice fellow." I said, "Okay." I go to the political science department fax machine at Duke, and I send faxes not only there, but to these other countries to set up meetings upon landing.
And what year is this?
This is mid to late 90s.
I just let you know that the Second Circuit just stopped using fax machines to distribute opinions. So, this checks out. Seems about right for a government.
That blows my story away. So I send the fax and say, "I'm going to be arriving on this date. I'm going to be staying at this hotel. Would love to talk with you. I got a recommendation from this bloke and would love to talk to you, and maybe figure out basically a way of making an introduction so that I can then try to get to people in the foreign ministry, people near the emir, things like that." And I don't think another thing of it because he never replies by fax or by mail or by phone. I land in Doha, the capital of Qatar, and I'm not a savvy person at this point. I'm pretty gullible, pretty naive, but I do notice
you're not the hardened criminal that you are today.
Yeah, from all those crystal meth arrests, I hadn't yet figured out the streets. But here at the airport, I did notice that there were a couple of people who were there at the gate who seemed to be looking at me and followed me all the way out through the airport. I guess they weren't being very, very secret about it, because even I noticed, and I was not trained to notice such things. I get to the hotel, I check in, and as I finish checking in, they usually take your passport at many foreign hotels, and they did here too. They take my passport. And right when they take the passport, a man in a thobe, the traditional dress in the Arabian Gulf, walks up, and he says, "Mr. Priess." I said, yes, I am. And he said, "I would like to talk to you for a minute. Would you come with me, please?" I said,
"Don't do it. Don't do it."
I wonder if it's this Hamad guy's his assistant or a brother or a cousin or something. I don't know. And he walks me over to some couches in this lobby in this moderate hotel. And sitting there is also a man in a military uniform, another Arab, who looks Gulf Arab to me. And he says, "This is my colleague. I'm so-and-so." I can't remember his name. And he said, "We'd like to ask you some questions. What are you doing in Qatar?" I said, "Well, I'm doing research for my dissertation." "Oh, that's interesting. What are you researching?" And I tell him the basics of it, international alliances and how they form and how they fall apart. "Who are you talking to when you're here?" I said, "Well, that's to be determined, isn't it? I'm hoping to talk to people in the government and figure out what's going on. And have you reached out to anyone in advance of your trip?" Why, yes, I have. There was one guy I sent a fax to a few months ago. And how did he respond to your message? I said, actually, he has not responded to my message. I haven't heard anything. And then he looks at me, he leans in, and he looks at me and says, no, you can tell me what he said. And my antenna weren't fully up at that point, but at that point...
What the fuck?
Although, why not?
Why
is
not?
an interesting
Yeah,
question.
like-
At this point, I just thought it was a very friendly country. And
Why?
starts asking-
Why would you think that?
well, I
Like-
don't know. It seemed to me, here I am. I have not traveled to the Gulf before. It's the first time in the region. People are extremely friendly, especially if it's someone that you know and it's a connection, personal connection. I think I had come from Kuwait, where I had some connections to other people that I'd been introduced to. And it was this kind of thing where you would meet somebody who would have heard of you from somebody else, and they would, take you out to lunch and drive you around town and do favors for you. So I thought maybe this guy's being friendly. He was decidedly not friendly. It became what I can only call an interrogation. It was not a physical, coercive interrogation.
This always sounded like an interrogation, by the way.
Right.
Like, from the moment they said, can we come and ask you some questions? I think that would be like my big tip off.
Time and time again, he asks over the course of probably an hour, what have you heard from him? When did he respond to you? What did he say to you? Where are you meeting him?
Why didn't you Bing this guy and find out who he was before you faxed him? Sorry, I'm asking my questions in the middle of the story. Sorry.
Because you can't.
This was the 1990s. I'm not even sure.
You could have
that
Yahooed
I was
him.
joking. I was
working
ask
yet.
Jeeves. What the
But I
fuck
did
is Jeeves
something-
for except
Let
for
me tell you,
moments like this?
Let me tell you, here's what happened next. Is after about an hour of questions with the military person sitting there just staring at me the entire time, not asking a question, not interacting, not reacting. I assumed he was alive, but I didn't check his breathing. He just stared through me. At the end, the gentleman in the thobe gets up and he hands me a card and he said hi, and it showed he was someone from the intelligence directorate. And he said, when Hamad does contact you here, you will give me a call. I say, okay. Well, the very next day, I was scheduled to go to the U.S. Embassy, which, again, this is...
How would this guy contact you? Just carry a fax machine around with you or something?
By the way, you are now at -3 questions. I think you've asked 6 already. So you're done.
I'm being
You're out.
very bad. I'm sorry.
And the next day, I'm scheduled to go to the American Embassy because I tried to do that everywhere I went, because if you talk to the political counselor or someone, they might actually be close to somebody in government that they could introduce me to. So it's a good way of getting a head start on these conversations that I needed to have for my research. So I'd already scheduled to go to the American Embassy, which was very, very small at the time. It was not the huge fortress embassy that's there now.
Although
it was tiny.
The Fifth Fleet was there, right?
No, Bahrain had the Fifth Fleet. So they had a
Okay.
robust embassy, but Qatar was a small house that was very vulnerable and ended up getting Inman standard defenses and things.
Are
But I
you
go to
sure
the
it's not
embassy.
pronounced Qatar.
Qatar.
It has the Q is a glottal stop.
Qatar. And so I go to the American Embassy in Qatar. And I'm scheduled to meet with the ambassador. And I sit with him and he asks about the research and I tell him, and he gives me a couple of ideas of people to connect with. He doesn't make any calls for me, so damn him. But at the end, before I'm about to go, I say, Mr. Ambassador, there's one thing I want to bring up. Something funny happened to me last night when I got here. And he sits back and says, what do you mean funny? And I explained to him how I'd sent this fax to Hamad and Hawali, and people had followed me, and then they talked to me for an hour uncomfortably in the hotel and said what they were looking for. I had not given him the guy's full name. I think I had said this guy named Hamad or something. And he's just sitting there listening and getting increasingly furrowed in his brow as he realizes, I have an American citizen who's being interrogated by the local intelligence service. You can almost see the gears turning. Do I need to intervene? What do I need to do? And so finally he asks, I'm sorry, what was the full name of the person you sent this communication to? And I said, it was Hamad Mohammed al-Hawali. And then his furrowed brow goes to wide eyes to facepalm.
Because this guy's been executed for something.
Not quite. What he said to me was, David, do you remember the attempted coup against the emir last year? I said, why, yes, as a student of Gulf politics, I'm aware. And he said, well, the military commander who had gone
Not
to
that great a student,
Sandhurst,
apparently.
who had been the military guy on the ground to help the former emir get back his job, that was Hamad Mohammed al-Hawali, and they have been looking for him nonstop for the last 10 months, and this is probably the first lead they've had. Congratulations, you are in the middle of a coup investigation, and they think you're the best lead they've ever had. And I said, you believe me that I'm not involved in a coup? And I give him credit. He just stopped and looked at me for a few seconds. He just looked and said, yeah, I believe you. I believe you. He said, let me make a call to the emir's palace and, we'll get this turned off right away. And sure enough, the next day, there was no one following me. I never heard a word about it again. But it was a very awkward story when I did apply to CIA, when they ask about any interaction.
Yeah, have you had any foreign
services.
Contacts from foreign intelligence services?
Why?
Yes.
Did you have contact with foreign intelligence service? Yes, I was
Qatar.
interrogated by one. Have you ever fostered a revolution against the U.S. government? Well, not the U.S. government, but some allied governments. I've been accused of it. That is the story I came with. I will now entertain questions from anyone but Kate.
Oh, I know, I ruined them all.
All right. So if you have questions, flag them in the Q. Flag yourself in the Q&A. And there are regular questions in here, but we're not taking regular questions. So
can I start?
Yeah,
I
you
really
start,
not
Kate.
have any questions.
No, you have questions.
How much did it cost to send a fax long distance to Qatar from in 1842?
Those are two separate questions. The passenger pigeons were too expensive, right? So how much did it cost is different than how much did I pay. How much did it cost? I have no clue because I didn't pay. The political science department was willing to eat the cost of faxes for research purposes.
All right. We have members of the audience coming on. I want to ask about the
everything about this seems real to me.
Why you were not more aware of the coup situation going on in Qatar, that this name wouldn't have raised any flags with you.
I was aware as a student of Gulf politics that there had been a coup attempt from the emir's father, who had been basically booted out, ran to Switzerland, absconded with billions of dollars. I knew that he had had some attempt to get back in, but the things I had read said he did not get back in, and the few people on the ground that were involved were wrapped up pretty easily. I never saw names in any of those reports, so I would not have known that this person, Hamad al-Hawali, was a person of interest.
And why did you just read that name? Is that because you don't actually remember the story that you told? You're just working off of the same notes that you were working off of before?
I'm just telling you that I have notes, and those help jog my memory in these times when memories are hard to recall.
Mm-hmm. Kate? Kate?
I'm thinking. I wasted all of my
thinking.
I know. It's I think that there's
Are you trying to look into my soul? Is that what you're doing?
There's some
it doesn't work through the internet.
I'm trying to. I know it's like
here.
the gift of the Magi, but with but through Zoom. I can never look into your eyes. I have to always be looking, unless I'm looking at the camera. So, anyways, I think that there is. What was your research on? Like that you needed to go to Qatar?
and all these other
My-
places.
Hold on. Let me grab it. I will read you my dissertation and filibuster this. No, the topic was, why do alliances break apart? And my specific focus area was Middle Eastern alliances, which I then took, the lessons, how my hypothesis worked out. I applied it to NATO and other alliances, which people actually cared about. So for me, I went to the Gulf region as a political scientist, trying to get elite decision makers, trying to talk to foreign ministers or people in the Emiri Palace, which was a bad idea because that's a really stupid thing to do as a grad student because they don't want to talk to you. But I had reasonable success there, actually getting to some former leaders and even some current ones. But it was tough in countries like Qatar, where I didn't have the contacts as much. So, you do the best you can.
And how did Qatar figure into this dissertation? So,
Yeah.
like, what was the theory of the case that, like, Qatar mattered for purposes of your dissertation?
Qatar mattered for the purposes of my dissertation because my two in-depth primary case studies were the Arab Cooperation Council, which nobody has ever heard of because it only lasted a couple of years before Iraq invaded Kuwait, and it was made up of Iraq, Jordan, Yemen, and Egypt, and the enduring alliance of the Gulf Cooperation Council, which was Saudi Arabia, Oman, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Qatar. So I was going to as many countries as I could in a reasonable amount of time to talk to the leaders of the countries of those alliances to get at their thinking about why the alliance endured or why the alliance collapsed. In the GCC case, it was about endurance. In the ACC case, it was about collapse. So Qatar was important for that, in part because I got a visa and could get in.
All right. So, KK, do you want to save your third question until later? Okay, so do I.
You mean her 30th question? Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, over 10. All right. Charles, you get 3 questions.
All right, I guess the one that I really thought of is, who was the ambassador to Qatar at the time that you were there? مين كان السفير لقطر في ذلك الوقت?
Ben, let me clarify the rules. The audience is not allowed to Bing or Google. What about the guest?
The guest is not really either.
Okay.
Although,
Okay, then I will give my answer. My answer is Ambassador William Theranos.
excellent.
Well played. Trying to think of other questions I might have. You said the British. Remember the name of the British guy you talked to in your class?
The one in my class?
Yeah.
No, he was British, and as a patriotic American, I reject all British influence and attempts to recolonize the North American continent.
Yeah, but
including
you
at
take
Duke.
suggestions on who to hang out with in a foreign country.
Yeah, I would like to have a word with him now, but I do not remember his name, and I do have a reason for it, which is that he was auditing the class because he was obviously, if he'd been to the military academy, Sandhurst, he was not taking the class as a senior undergrad at Duke. He was basically auditing the class just because that was a topic he was doing while he was doing other research there. So I don't even remember. I don't know if I recognized him. If I don't know if I saw him, if I would even recognize him.
Cool. And I guess last question: Did you see El Udeid Air Base when you were there? Or had it not been set up yet?
El Udeid Air Base, for those of you who are not familiar, because yes, I've kept up on the country since my story. El Udeid Air Base is a hugely massive airfield and support structure and pre-positioning sites set up on the peninsula of Qatar, which juts into the Arabian Gulf or Persian Gulf, depending on which side you're on. And it is the center of so much that happened with Iraq and Afghanistan. It is also Qatar's get out of jail free card. If they piss off somebody in the region too much, they think the United States has so much invested there that we will help them. Al Udeid may have been a small landing strip at the time, but it was not the huge base that it was. The thing I remember from that time was that Qatar knew that it had large reserves of natural gas, but they hadn't started exploiting them yet. Once they started exploiting those reserves, that's when everything became huge. So I did not go to Al Udeid unless I accidentally walked across a strip in the sand and didn't know it.
All right.
Fine questions.
Charles, we're going to...
Wait, let's get Charles to just give his whether or not he believes him now.
Oh, no. We're going to save that to the end. We're going to
Okay.
banish you to the left-hand corner here. We're not going to dismiss you. Paula, you get 3 questions.
My first question is, why not contact the U.S. Embassy before you get there? You're a PhD student going through a program. I think you should maybe be contacting the embassy before you land, no?
Yes, and I did. That is why I had an appointment with the ambassador the morning after I arrived.
That's
So
Ambassador Theranos?
Yes, Ambassador.
William Theranos.
I believe it's pronounced Theranos.
I see.
But yes, I had an appointment with the ambassador. At each country I went to, I tried to set an appointment with someone at the embassy, anybody who would see me well enough in advance. In Kuwait, I believe it was the political counselor. In Yemen, it may have been the deputy chief of mission or political counselor. In Jordan, I think it was like the press officer, because they have much more pressing business. But in Qatar, they didn't have so much to do that they could prevent the ambassador from seeing me. So that's why I got the appointment with him. Or he was just a nice guy. I don't know.
All right. Your second question.
Pretty much, I'm convinced he's saying gutter. Like, I'm 100% convinced.
It's the closest pronunciation. My Arabic teacher taught me that I did take Arabic in graduate school. And my Arabic teacher taught me that even though it looks like a Q in most transliterations, you pronounce it like a G, but you pronounce it as far back in your throat as possible. So it's almost like you're swallowing your tongue. So it's like...
Am I allowed to refute this?
Now, how do you pronounce it, Paula?
I don't want to sound stupid.
He would make me practice letters over and over and
You're
over
a native
again, so.
speaker.
I don't want to. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm native. It was spoken at home. I don't want to embarrass my ancestors.
It's your first language, right?
No, it's not. I was born in the United States.
Yeah, it was spoken at home. What
They weren't teaching me Arabic at home.
What language did your parents speak to you?
English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ben.
I hear quality English skills.
Did you have a connecting flight? Because it's kind of a long way to the Middle East.
It was a long way to the Middle East, and I believe on my way to the Middle East, I had a connecting flight.
Where?
But my flight to Qatar was probably from Kuwait or from
Doha and like just save
Yes.
us all.
my flight into Doha was probably from Kuwait or from the United Arab Emirates. I don't recall which one at this time.
Okay, gotcha. My third question is, so how do you like explain these instances to the CIA, like that you just like accidentally stumbled into this and like missed a lot of red flags? Like, I want to, if you could explain how that unfolded, that would be wonderful.
As I recall, my discussions with the CIA about this were like my discussions with the CIA about everything else when I applied, which is complete and total honesty and forthrightness, because that is what was recommended. Said if you try to hide something, we may know it already, in which case you're screwed, or we may not know it, but we will detect that you're being deceptive. And basically they're like an institutional Kate Klonick, right? So they will know that you're lying, and we will find out anyway. And I actually took that advice. So, I told them about the time that I peeked in my sister's closet when I was like 7 years old to find out what she got me for my birthday. And they said, we don't need to hear that shit. Stop. That's too much detail. So I have no doubt that I told them the full story and then let them roll their eyes at how naive I was.
All right, we are banishing Paula to the left-hand corner.
It sounds so
and that brings us to Daniel, who is in his native habitat, looking mysterious. All right. You get 3 questions, Daniel.
Can I ask a rules question first about the
Sure.
game? Can I ask a question of a person not telling the story?
Ooh, this is fun.
I think
No.
that's no.
And does it count as one of the 3 questions?
I'm happy for it to count as one of the 3 questions.
I think you can. Why no, Kate?
I don't know. I don't like Daniel.
Okay.
Just
Yes,
kidding, Daniel. Of course.
Because Kate's answer is completely irrational. Yes, Daniel, you can.
Ben, have you heard a story like this from David before in working with him? Or anything that bears similarities to it?
I have never heard a story remotely like this, but I have also never heard stories about David's dissertation research in general. And so I haven't heard anything that conflicts with this at all.
And would it have killed you to ask Mr. Wittes?
What's the currency in Qatar?
I'm sorry, what's the currency?
Yeah, what's the currency named?
The currency is power. Sorry, I almost kept the straight face. I believe the currency is the real.
Close enough. Okay.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
That's a lot of emphasis he's putting on 2 answers.
Ben, you're muted.
So before we go on here, I have to clean up something with Paula here.
That's not banishment.
Who has asked whether her speaking skills in English are so bad that I thought she was not native
Oh my
speaking.
God, no.
And that is not what
you should
happened.
totally make Ben feel bad about this.
No, you shouldn't. I assumed you were native Arabic speaking because you told me once that you spoke Arabic at home.
Do you know
And
how
so,
I learned how to speak Arabic?
So I assumed it was your first language and that you, because I knew your family were Lebanese immigrants, and you told me you spoke Arabic at home.
I learned Arabic.
A little bit racist.
You know, if David had told me he spoke, spoke Russian at home, I would have assumed that Russian was his first language.
Russian?
No, I was
I don't
joking.
know. I was just using.
Russians don't speak Russian at home.
I was joking. I learned Arabic from TV shows, from being forced to watch Arabic dramas. Like, you know how like there's really bad like American dramas.
I
had to watch
remember them
those.
well.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's how I
Egyptian
learned
TV.
Arabic.
Egyptian TV, actually.
That is fabulous. All right, so we are bringing everyone back. Charles, whose Arabic is excellent. Daniel, who can do in 2 questions what most people require 3 to do. And Paula. But first, Kate, you and I both have one more question, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, David.
Yeah.
We reserved our questions.
Have you was it your first time to Doha?
It was my first time to Doha. Yes. Where are you going with that?
I don't
No,
know. I didn't have
that's-
another question.
Okay, here's my my final question, which is, at any point in this interaction where you're confronted by somebody you at some point realize is an intelligence chief or an intelligence guy for the Qatari military or secret police, were you scared?
Yes. As I'm sat down in the lobby and there's someone in a military uniform, and the questions turn to more accusations than pure questions, I felt uncomfortable. Two things I think in my favor, even as the younger version of myself, I think. One is I was generally a trusting, friendly person. So my first instinct, even then, was not assume the worst. And second, Gutter was a friendly country. We were cooperating with them. We were in the process of building relations with them. And projecting backwards, I have to think that somewhere in this brain was the logic of they would not actually hurt an American. So putting those two together, it helps me understand why I could be scared but not panicked.
All right. So, members of the Greek chorus, this is your last chance to change your votes. So far, we have 55% who say that David is telling the truth, 45% who think he's lying. Let's see what direction that goes. Charles, what is your conclusion?
So I lean, I guess I'm an analyst for a living. I lean towards lie, but not a definite.
So what's your,
not
is it
my confidence
low
level is
confidence
probably,
level?
I would say moderate confidence, low to moderate confidence.
Low to moderate confidence toward the lie. Paula, how do you assess
And please
David's...
answer in Arabic.
Well, Charles didn't answer in Arabic. Why should Paula?
I don't know. Like, it seems like, when you watch a horror movie and you're like, there's no way someone would just keep proceeding in that situation. That's my first instinct. But he's joking so much about things he doesn't know that I can't imagine a CIA officer would come to the show for Where's the Lie and not be prepared. So I'm going to go with lie just because I don't know, maybe he just didn't prepare, but the first scenario seems off to me.
And what's your confidence level in that?
51%.
Charles gave it low to moderate confidence.
I'm at 51%.
Oh, so you're at very low confidence. Okay. Daniel, how do you assess this situation?
So my instinct would say that he's lying, but using the notes and something tells me this is a contrived act to get us to think he's lying. So I'm going to go with he's telling the truth.
Interesting. Reverse psychology, Daniel.
Layers
it's kind of
within
like
layers.
Kind of like backlighting. Kate, how do you assess this?
I think it's true.
Kate's going with true. So we have a split. 2 low confidence lie, 2 true. How confident are you in this?
I'm like, I just don't want to believe that David would ever lie to me. So that's most of it.
It's a bad basis for.
That's a really poor basis for a confidence level.
Yeah. Well,
it's called regulatory capture by your source.
I also just think that this is, well, I also think that there is slightly like not enough payoff for this to be like made up. Like you'd make it a little bit bigger if you were going to make it up.
Like I actually engineered
like
a
you
coup
spent
attempt?
like a night in jail and they took you to and tried to and then you finally
No one
like
would
got
believe
out
that.
or like something.
Everyone would have heard the story of the American student who was in jail in an allied country for a night because of a fax. That probably would have crossed the threshold for, at least for lawfare, we'd publish that shit. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay.
All right. So the audience final vote is 58% for David telling the truth, 42% for him lying. So we have a slight plural, kind of a slight edge toward telling the truth. I'm going to go with this as a lie, and I'll let me give my reasons here. First of all, I think if you had met the ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Qatar, you would remember his name. And I don't believe that William Theranos is a credible secondly, when you went to look up the guy, to repeat the guy's name, you referred back to your notes. And I think that suggests that you wrote out some notes and then you told the story off of them, and then you needed to refer back to them. Though I acknowledge the Daniel possibility that was a clever ruse to make us think you were lying when in fact you were telling the truth. I acknowledge that. I still think it just came off as, a bit shady. And the final element is Daniel's question to me. I kind of feel like I probably would have heard this story before if it were true. So I am going to go, Christopher Argyris says he has met Ambassador Theranos. Wait, Chris, is that for real? Because it is a Greek name.
How much are you paying Chris?
Tammy just stuck her head in the
Tammy
room
counts
and
as Googling.
And Tammy says that
Googling.
Ambassador
That's not
Theranos
fair.
is real, but that the name is wrong.
She's a living Google. You
I am
cannot
switching.
influence
No,
the vote.
this is not. I did not Google it. I did
You're
not
as
query
full of
Tammy.
The rules
Tammy
have gone
just
out the
came
window.
in and asked.
Just cut up
I'm
the rules.
switching my
Cut up
vote.
the rules.
The whole story is true. David, we need the big reveal.
The big reveal is that every detail that I could remember is 100% true. Here's the thing. I could not remember the name of the ambassador, but I knew it was Greek, and I knew it began with something. So while you voted,
you just have been watching the Elizabeth Holmes trial.
correct. It is Patrick Theros.
Patrick
not William
Theros.
But
Okay,
that's pretty damn good.
Tammy is nodding now.
Considering I haven't interacted with the guy in
Tammy
almost
was the
30 years,
ringer.
that's not bad.
So
Now-
Tammy not only knew the person was real, but knew the real name of the person.
And I knew it was wrong when I said it. That's why I said I can't remember, but I came up with the closest name I could, which is not bad considering I was operating from zero. But let me react to
First
a
of
few
all, wait a
comments
minute.
here.
For people, and I'm looking at you, Ann Kornhauser, who were saying in the Greek chorus that I cheated. I sat here passively playing the game, and my wife, who is not somebody whose actions I control, ran in here and exclaimed that ambassador is real, but the name is wrong.
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
And Christopher did it too. So I think this is kosher. This is people listening to the story, bringing what they know to it.
Okay, let me make a few comments on your comments. So, yes, everything that I did in this entire event was designed to trigger people to think I was lying because of the stupid pseudoscience that is out there about spy the lie and how to spot a liar. Like, if you look up to the left, you're lying because you're recalling things from your creative side, or vice versa. Or you need to look at notes to remember things. All of that was indeed contrived. I'm sorry, Ben. Daniel, spot on. It's a simple story. It's true. It was naivete probably that had me wondering what was going on. But I will say, what was I going to do in that case? What's the alternative for somebody who's not naive? Is you get confronted when you have no passport, you're in the hotel. Do you go running out the front door screaming for the police when the intelligence officers are the ones asking you questions? Plus, they weren't doing anything really physical or uncomfortable. It was just asking me a whole lot of questions about this one guy who I knew I had no contact with. Paula, you made the point, you really, knowing you were coming on here, shouldn't you have prepared and known the name of these people? You give a lot more credit to how much time I have that I can prepare to come on here and tell a story. I did not research any of this.
From a run and haven't even brushed my
hair.
hair.
I went straight from this. Ben, the fact that you called me a bit shady is a step up from Rick Grinnell, who said I was creepy. So I'll take that.
I would never say you were creepy.
That's good. And Kate, I would never lie to you unless it were a game that was designed to lie to you. That's built into the process.
But it wasn't wrong.
Yeah. So, by the way, do be careful of all of the pop psychology that tells you all the ways that human beings lie. It is highly culturally dependent. It varies more across individuals than it centers on individuals. And there are some ways that you can do physiological stuff. The polygraph is inherently flawed, but there are some things that show stress. It doesn't show lying, but lying is the most common thing that causes them. But the stuff that you can observe, unless you really know the person and their habits really, really well, you can actually put yourself in the wrong direction pretty damn easily going with those courses online and those books that people sell saying, I can tell if somebody's lying by watching them for 30 seconds. No, I did a few touches of my face because that's a common one when you're trying to recall something. I did a few looks at the notes. Don't buy into that stuff. People show discomfort in very different ways for very different reasons. For all you knew, I had gas, and that's why I was shifting in my seat.
TMI. Please let that be the lie.
All right. We are going to leave it there. David Priess, you're a great American. You're a creepy guy. I even know this from official U.S. government sources. By the way, you're a hero in the Federal Republic of Germany.
Why?
Because he pissed off Rick Grinnell, who's the most hated man there in modern times.
Could we just have 5 seconds for who this guy is and why you and Scott and David are always making fun of him?
So Rick Grinnell is a Twitter troll, a right-wing Twitter troll who saw an opportunity to praise Donald Trump a lot and was rewarded for this by being made ambassador to Germany, where he took his Twitter troll ways and pissed off the entire country for a number of years. And then to reward him for
was
that...
Was he oh my God, this place does beer and pretzels all wrong? Was that mostly his Twitter feed for 4 years?
It was bad. And he was... Merkel hated him, and he was a... and then Trump brought him back and installed him as the acting director of national intelligence, where he, which was caused much consternation in the intelligence community. And then eventually he left and went back to being a Twitter troll. And Scott Shapiro and I adore him because we have found that he will respond to any provocation. I mean, if you tweet something really grade school level at him, he cannot resist responding. And so Scott and I find this ever so amusing. And recently, the reason we have been particularly amused by him recently is that he decided that my efforts to get Paula some more additional Twitter followers over the weekend was a creepy reflection of my interest in foot fetishism.
I wonder where he got that idea.
Which I, of which I plead actually that I have really was just dumbfounded by the idea of selling foot pics, which all watchers of this show know. So that is the story of Rick Grinnell. So he went after Paula over the weekend on Twitter, which was not nice. And
Can we all go as Rick Grinnell for Halloween?
Yeah.
Why?
And David, you should follow Paula back on Twitter. And so Rick Grinnell, if you're listening, you are not a great American, but you are welcome on the show. Scott and I would love to have you on the show so we can taunt you and make fun of you. We think that would be fun. And also because Paula has some questions for you about feet. We are going to leave it there. Kate, who's going to be our guest tomorrow?
Emily Oster's coming on.
Emily Oster.
Yeah. The American economist, professor at Brown University, author of Expecting Better, and is going to talk about childcare post-COVID. And yeah, just generally about her work. I'm really excited. I've been a fan of hers for a long time. So
that is exciting. Ross Lander has a very interesting suggestion, KK, in the chat that I think you should take a look at.
No, I'm not doing that. No. No, only nice people get paper bag puppets.
All right. Rick Grinnell denied. Yeah. We will be back tomorrow, 23 hours and 2 minutes from now, with Emily Oster, but not with Rick Grinnell. And until then, David?
There is no fun. We don't have fun anymore.
Right. But we do have...
fax machines.
Ambassador Theros Theranos.
Yes, and we do have Ambassador Paul Theros. See you later, guys.